All right, hello everybody. Just give people a second to file in here. All right, I'm gonna type this all out. Well, hopefully type it much better than I just typed in there. But thanks for joining us for today's coffee break, everybody. Before I introduce you to Melanie Gottlieb for moderation and introductions, I just want to cover how to interact on this webinar. You cannot speak and nobody can see you, so don't worry about accidentally interrupting or anything like that. The two main ways you can interact are through the chat panel and through the Q&A function. If you have a question for the panelist, please use the Q&A function. It makes it much easier for us to figure out what questions have been asked and who has asked them. You can ask questions anonymously, and you can also view what other people have asked, and you can upvote those questions and add your own comments to them. For any other kind of chat, discussion, commentary, what have you, please use the chat function. For that one, you can address questions or comments or whatever directly to the panelists, or you can select all panelists and attendees in the to window if you want to have a wider discussion with other attendees. So without further ado, I want to hand it off to Melanie Gottlieb.
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon. I'm Melanie Gottlieb, Deputy Director of ACRO, and I'd like to welcome you to today's ACRO Coffee Break. It's a pleasure to be on the line with all of you today as we navigate the challenges presented by the COVID-19 crisis together. Today's webinar is part 3 of a 3-part series on business continuity for managing documents, specifically transcripts, during this time of crisis. We've noted a continuing theme as we've monitored listservs, fielded individual member questions via email, and in other coffee breaks, and that is that many colleges and universities do not yet have sufficient capacity to both send and receive transcripts electronically. This crisis has highlighted the need for institutions to create this infrastructure, not only in the name of efficiency and cost savings and better student service, but also simply for business continuity. In this series, we hope to share with you easy and inexpensive ways to ramp up your institutional capacity to manage this critical function of your offices more efficiently while remote. Previously, we have heard from both available third-party solutions, and you can see those archives on our website. Today, we have members of the Speedy Committee who will share with you their DIY solutions to maintaining service, sometimes in ways that are not all super technical. Next slide. Today we have with us Matthew Bemis, Associate Registrar at the University of Southern California, Monterey Sims, Director of Admission and Evaluation for the University of Phoenix, Susan Reyes, Programmer and Analyst at San Diego State University, and James Fagert, Registrar, Saddleback College. I especially want to thank these dedicated members who've given us their time and expertise while navigating this crisis on their own campuses during this unprecedented disruption in higher education. As always, we're hopeful that our technology will not fail us. With a number of panelists and a number of folks on the Zoom, we're all working at the mercies of our home Wi-Fi, so please bear with us. Next slide. As you navigate the challenges in this crisis, your association is here to connect you with network colleagues to work through challenges together. We've opened up our content vaults to the higher education community through our free 3-month membership option. If your membership has lapsed, or if there are others on your campus that you want to have access to our resources to support you through this transition, we hope that you will consider this option. I would also like to share with you, if you are interested in this topic, we have available in the ACRO bookstore, the Basic Guide to EDX. It includes chapters on identifying your best solution the best format, a startup checklist, and Acro guidance. It's available in the Acro bookstore today. Next slide. Acro's worked diligently to provide specific guidance to institutions as they navigate decision-making on their campuses to adapt and serve students. To build our guidance, we're using established Acro standards and re-envisioning them through the lens of the current COVID-19 crisis, and then consulting with subject matter experts from our board of directors, amongst the membership, and across higher education. Who is the guidance team? Executive Director Mike Riley, myself, Associate Exec Directors Tom Green and Tina Deneen, and Director of Research Wendy Kilgore, all of us former campus-based professionals with years of experience, along with the Director of Government Relations, Will Gill. While this is not the way that typically Acro releases new guidance, we're balancing the processes of member development with the need to address the current crisis with something immediate to support you as you navigate this new normal. We want to give you guidance that's thoughtful, well-developed, yet timely. If you have suggestions for the guidance team to consider, please don't hesitate to contact us through the contact form available at acro.org/COVID-guidance. You will find guidance specific to managing transcripts and remote transcript operations on that page. Next slide. Since the onset of the crisis, Acro has deployed 3 practice snapshot surveys to gain insight into the challenges and evolving practices at our institutions. I'll share with you just very quickly a couple of data items relevant to today's discussion, but you can find all of the results on our website. Next slide. The first relevant slide has to do with official transcript printing during the COVID-19 crisis. And that is of the 76% who are still printing official transcripts at this time, 64% are going to their campuses during this crisis to print. 13% are using a third-party vendor to print, and another 13% are doing it in their home offices. Next slide. This slide shows the data on changes in practice that are under consideration or have already been made on how official high school transcripts are received in response to COVID-19. Of the 87% who receive high school transcripts and the 34% who are considering or who have already made changes, we can see that several are, that 82% are moving to accept unofficial transcripts. Next slide. This slide is changes under consideration or already made on how official college transcripts are received in response to COVID-19. And next slide. And the last is changes under consideration or already made on how official college transcripts are delivered in response to COVID-19. And with that snapshot, I am going to turn the mic over to Matt Bemis.
Thank you very much, Melanie. First, welcome everybody. On behalf of the Speedy Committee and all of us, we hope you and your family and your colleagues and your students are well and safe and at home. So my part of this presentation is going to focus on EDI and the Speedy Server. For those of you who are not familiar with EDI, EDI is a machine-to-machine data transmission. There's no human intervention involved. For those of you who have visited an ATM or gotten gas recently, probably not so common now, you've engaged in an EDI transaction. What we're going to look at is really what's available to you as an education community member in the United States and available on the Speedy Server. The quick tour of the Speedy Server, it was set up in about 1996 with the purpose of providing a free data exchange for schools in the United States to send and receive data in a standardized format. What I hope to do is walk through these first 2 slides, and so the takeaway here is that you'll be able to, after this call, you'll be able to go to the Speedy Server and negotiate what I'm going to show you and kind of go through these checkboxes to see if you're a good candidate to determine if data on the Speedy Server or schools registered on the Speedy Server is a good candidate for you to get started if you're not already receiving. So we put down the Speedy Server org And what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the sender and receiver reports. More importantly, the sender reports, so you know who's sending. And what we're going to ask you to do after this call is go poke around and see who's sending these things called transaction sets 130. Transaction sets 130 represent EDI data that's coming from one school to another or from a vendor to a school, and identifies standardized data that can be recognized. We'll also show you what the 131 transaction sets look like so that you know who's acknowledging the receipt of transcripts. What I would ask is that when you get into this area in the Speedy Server registrant report list, you be patient with yourself because it's a lot of data. And while the format is standardized, you just need to be patient poking around and doing your investigation. Can I get the next slide, please? And what we're asking is, we find measurable activity, commit to joining the community, registering for the Speedy Server. And once you've registered, reaching out to one or more of the Speedy Committee members to actively start testing. I'm calling this EDI Lite, meaning that you're not going to necessarily have an EDI transaction that's going to come in and map to your student data. That is a secondary step. This first step is really registering for the server, getting files in, and using some of their utilities to render that data so that you can actually load this data. For schools right now who can't get data, this may be a perfect resource from these schools that are sending data to get data to come in. I know that's a lot quickly, but what I'd like to do is do a quick demo on the service itself to show you what it looks like. And I'm going to try to take over the screen here. Share screen. Okay, hopefully you can all see my screen. Yep. And what we're going to ask you to do is when you get to the Speedy Server, go to Reports, this tab here. And if you go down to the types of sender-receiver reports, you're going to want to choose the sender. And what I'm asking is that you check a recent year and a recent month where you'd expect large activity and transactions. And what you're going to see here is a list of transaction 130s and transaction 131s for each school that's registered on the server. This is in alphabetical order by state. And so for me, as an example, if I was going in and looking to see who was exchanging data, I would do a search for Allen Hancock, which is one of the first schools listed alphabetically in California. And looking at this, I could see Allen Hancock sent a number of EDI 130 transactions to many schools, and American River following. So I would go through to see who's sending what around me. That's the real homework here. Go into this service and find out who's sending data, and so that if you were to register, you could receive data from them. Now again, it's not going to be machine to machine. It will be machine to person to start, but it's something you can do as a grassroots. So I know that's a quick overview here. I have included in the slide deck of how I got here and how you can repeat that or replicate that, but that's really going to be your homework there. If we can jump back to stop sharing here. Now we're back to the PowerPoint. So getting started, you have nothing to lose. This is all grassroots. If you're successful, you can demonstrate to others that this data method will work for you. This is free of charge. Mapping to your data system is secondary. This is about getting data back. You have actually a utility that can render this data so that your operators can load this into your student information system. This data is considered official. This data is accurate. And by the way, it's standardized. Every transcript will look the same with your quick and easy software. For the most part, this is a one and done setup with the registration. Navigating firewalls will be your biggest challenge, and the Speedy Committee can help you with that. If there are no trading partners near you, also consider a grassroots effort. Do you have a large feeder who would be a benefit from sending EDI data to you, and can you partner with them? That's something the Speedy Committee can also help you negotiate. Finally, the Speedy Committee is here for you. This is an ACRO work group that is funded by ACRO to provide outreach and service to our universities. So if you engage in this process, you'll have 12 new best friends on the Speedy Committee who will help you get started. This is what we do. We're all committed to this. Many of us have been with this committee for 10 or more years. And our mission is to help you get to the point where business continuity is a no-brainer and you can use these resources. And by the way, anyone who's ever gone to EDI has never gone back. The efficiency is unbelievable. The lack of fraudulent data, that fraudulent data is eliminated. And so this is what we're here to help you with. I know that's a lot of information quickly, and I'll follow up on the question and answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Hey, everybody. Excuse me. I hope this finds you well. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Just to introduce myself again, I'm Monterey Sims, Director of Admissions and Evaluation at University of Phoenix. And I'm also a longtime member of the ACRO Speedy Committee, so here to help as part of your resource community. I think it's important right now for us to remember during these trying times that we do have the ability to positively impact our students and our staff through temporary solutions that don't necessarily require technical resources or extensive project planning. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to share a couple low-tech, no-tech solutions, and these might spark some creativity on your campus or encourage you to share some of your additional best practices that you've implemented with others on the call today during the question and answer period. Currently, at our institution, we're looking at blockers that are outside of our applicants' or students' control, which could delay their ability to start their education journey. At a time when education is really more important than ever, applicants want to be able to act on their decisions and go back to school without unnecessary barriers. And continuing students do not need additional stressors as they're trying to continue on in their education when they're already experiencing so many stressors in everyday life during this difficult time. So that's kind of the spirit of what these low-tech, no-tech solutions are aimed at solving. In thinking about how we can make a positive impact, we have completed a couple easy solutions that we wanted to share. And the themes are really around temporary modifications of policy where appropriate, being flexible and creative in the signing and collecting of documents, and providing just-in-time information to students and advisors. So some of the things we've done specifically are, for example, waiving immunization document requirements temporarily. As most of you have probably experienced, those students who are on campus physical locations are now attending remotely. And so those documents aren't necessarily required in their programs at this time, but will be required at the point that they return to an on-ground environment. So we have waived temporarily and put a policy exception in place for those specific forms that aren't necessarily needed during the online environment. And we've also created some very simple tracking mechanisms so that we can be sure to collect those documents as students change modalities back to their preferred on-campus location. The second thing we've done is we've provided some Adobe Sign options, and not just for students who are trying to complete forms in a digital environment and get them back to us to continue in their programs or to be admitted, but also internally for our advisors, forms that they might have to sign off on. So it's important to remember your internal staff are also dealing with these same frustrations. So the Adobe Sign option has been a really great solution for us. The next one is document submissions through a variety of methods. That can be as simple as one of the ones you saw on our survey that people are using the encrypted email, even allowing students to take a picture of a document with their phone and email it to their advisor. Again, you know, if there's something that's required at your institution as far as official documentation, tracking of these exceptions would be important at this time, but it doesn't require a lot of technical expertise to just track and follow up on those documents. You might need in a different format at a later time. Also, the very popular solution of accepting unofficial transcripts, we've been doing that. It's going really well. We kind of shifted the paradigm at the University of Phoenix because we do order transcripts on behalf of our applicants from their prior attended institutions. So what we've done is continued to place those orders for those official transcripts, but at the same time, we are allowing students to provide their advisor with an unofficial transcript. And even if their institution is not closed at this time, not all students know where to find that information or resources about whether or not they can obtain their document easily. And so it's just a confusing time for everybody. So we're trying to be very flexible. And while we are placing the orders for the official transcripts, we are temporarily accepting those unofficials. And we are using those for the evaluation of the student record and the official admissions process. Our tracking enables us to make sure that those documents are obtained and those official documents are obtained before any student reaches that point of graduation. So there's going to be a verification process that occurs when the official document arrives, where there's a comparison between the unofficial and official document. So those are probably similar to some of the things you guys are setting up on your campuses. It's working very well, and we've learned that students are very happy that they don't have to be delayed. The last one is just-in-time resources, and I think we've seen a lot of institutions not only doing this internally for their students and staff, but sharing resources with the higher education community. And I think it's so important right now that we're all communicating with each other and sharing those resources that we have best practices in. I know University of Phoenix has shared some great resources with teachers for at-home learning. We've also shared institutions with our advisors as we get notified of institutions that are closed or temporarily closed due to the impact of COVID-19. We've created just a very simple spreadsheet that we've placed on SharePoint that our internal staff can easily help advise students of where to obtain those documents or of our unofficial transcript acceptance policy. So those are just a couple really quick low-tech, no-tech solutions. Next slide, please. So in planning for the future, I really think we did the right thing by looking at electronic transcript partnerships as a university. It has really enabled us to experience minimal disruptions for our students. We've been basically saved by having those electronic transcript partnerships and having consistent processing. So as you can see here currently, and this has been, years in the making, almost a decade in the making of these partnerships. But paper transcripts we receive is only 32%. And the requests that we have to mail out rather than do electronically is only 11%. So there already was a big benefit there. But as institutions plan for the future, or even as you look at temporary solutions right now, I'd like to offer the idea that, and reinforce what Matt said, that the ACRO Speedy Committee is here to help answer questions, share ideas, and connect you with the correct resources that will help you overcome those barriers to implementation of any type of electronic exchange or transmission and receipt of records or data that you're interested in doing or that would look right for your institution. We're not about trying to make you or force you into EDI, XML, or PDF. It's about what does your institution need and how can we help you get that. Next slide, please. So electronic documents, there really is a great benefit to considering the electronic exchange of education records. And if this crisis has taught us all anything, it's that business continuity is now at the top of that list in an already long list of benefits to students and institutions. The electronic commerce is something students are very accustomed to. So regardless of if you order transcripts on behalf of your students or have them do it, it's going to be easy peasy solution for them. Efficiency for students and institutions is very evident. The accuracy is phenomenal, and the security outweighs all the other benefits combined. So if you do it for no other reason, do it for that. And I think that may be my last slide. Oh, one more, sorry. So as Matt said, we would love to help you get started. For your institution, it just requires that you work through the needs of your institution and your students. And then based on those guiding principles, figure out how to operate optimally with your other secondary and post-secondary institutions that have the biggest impact on your student population. And you can use those reports that Matt showed you to do that. There's a ton of resources available in the ACRO community, and there may even be experts in pockets of your institution or state that can help in addition to the ACRO Speedy Committee. For instance, financial aid is already transmitted electronically, so there may be folks in your financial aid office that know all about EDI or XML. ACRO can assist you in helping to locate resources, and even Speedy Committee has a calculator where you can plug in your specific scenario to develop your cost-benefit analysis. We realize resources are tight and now more than ever, so garnering support and buy-in at your institution is going to be critical, not only now, but for future endeavors. Now is really the time to start thinking about more services and the future state and how to enable a stronger business continuity, efficiency, and customer service at your institution. That's it for me. Thanks, you guys.
Hi, this is Graves. I'm with San Diego State University, and I'm on the Speedy Committee, but I'm more a technical person and on the functional side of the house. So I just kind of want to share with all of you some of the things that have been considered and are being done at San Diego State as far as transcripts. For the past 8 years, I've worked very hard on building our EDI partnership with a lot of colleges and transcripts. So for our transcript students and our college transcripts, the adjustments for COVID-19 were actually fairly minimal because 87% of our college transcripts already come via EDI. So it's business as usual for the majority of our college transcript recipients. The bulk of the remaining 13% of the incoming transcripts are now PDFs that are either sent via a vendor network or secure email type link. So for those, we just had to address ways of uploading them or printing them to our imaging system and getting them into workflow. Where we really had a huge gap for the first couple of weeks was our high school transcript. We have a couple institutions, usually Florida high schools or Texas high schools, that will send the PDI. We get a lot of PDFs for high schools, and we still get a lot of paper. But no matter how our high school transcripts come to us, we typically would still print them out and pass the paper from person to person or office to office. They were very adamant that they needed that paper for the way they process high school transcripts. So I've been working with them a lot the last several weeks to find ways to have staff upload PDFs that come via email or are sent from other departments, and to do some automatic upload when we get transcript from a vendor like Parchment. Not only do you get the PDF transcript, but you also get an index file that tells you who it's for, what institution it's from, all those important keywords. So you can set up automated uploads of that into an imaging system or a workflow system, or even your information. We've been working to put those in place. Our freshman admissions had always been too busy to work on that. So now all of a sudden they're finding the benefits to that electronic processing of these documents. But what we've done is we've really relied on our vendor partnerships. Parchment is offering free resources to high schools right now. So we have talked to several of our high schools that we know are having trouble getting transcripts to us, because traditionally someone has to go to the office and print, and they're not allowed to do that. Trying to get them to send PDFs through a vendor network or through an email. Working with various offices on campus that typically collect transcripts and forward them to admissions, and getting all of that online on workflows. We've also adjusted a lot of policies, and we are currently accepting unofficial documents. So we did a lot of work to make sure that we put links to upload documents in secure portions of a student's web portal and their financial aid link, so that those documents that they typically would have had to bring into the office or mail into the office can now be uploaded. So we've just kind of been going through a lot of those policies, and I kind of had hoped after the first 2-3 weeks things would settle down, but as they discover the benefit of having these electronically and being able to process them and send them to the next level of processing electronically, I'm still continuing getting more and more work orders to continue that work. So on the technical side, I'm always here and ready to talk to anyone about how to do EDI, how to automate your processing. In this day and age, it's extremely critical because without it, we're stuck having someone have to go back to campus and expose themselves. So that's kind of been my life for the last few months, is actually teaching all those offices who are slow to adopt the automated route, the technology route, teaching them that it's okay, it's a good thing.
Well, hello. Good morning from here on the West Coast, and afternoon to everyone else. I'm Jim Feigert, the registrar at Saddleback College. We are one of the 115 community colleges in California. And I, sort of batting cleanup here, wanted to just sort of add a couple of items and refocus back on a few things that were already said. I think particularly about taking a look at who's already sending. So if you can take a look at the schools around you, particularly your feeder schools, find out who's sending to you or who's capable of sending to you. That's going to be a big piece for us. We, as a community college, our main focus is our high schools around us. And a little while ago, we were trying to see what we could do to get a better flow of high school transcript data to us, so we could deal with placement for our placement testing for prerequisites for our English and math through our AB 705 endeavors. And we were having to do all this either through an actual test or a paper transcript, and it was becoming unwieldy. So conversations surrounded how can we get that as data. And one of the things that Sue talked about is partnering with your vendors. We are fortunate in our situation that we have a lot of our local high schools are partners with Parchment, and a lot of them are already sending transcript data, high school transcript data. So 11 of our 15 largest were already sending XML data, and we've been able to incorporate that incoming XML data into our placement functionality and help get some of these prerequisites and placement tests out of the way just through high school transcript data. That's great. Not everyone has that, and we understand that. So have those conversations. Try to see who around you is sending data and why and in what format. Statewide for us, I also take a look at our listservs, and one came in today about wondering who can sign an MOU for high schools because they want to batch PDF transcripts and get them all in. And my first question is, well, why are we focusing on the PDFs? Yes, I understand that's a step better than the paper ones, but why can't we do that electronically? So see if that capability is around you and how you can utilize that. I think it's a super, super, super important conversation to have. At my school, I'm in a unique situation in that I oversee both admissions and the registrar functions. So I get to see both sides of it. And I think that brings up the conversation. It's important at your institutions to talk to your registrars and talk to your admissions offices if you're in different areas. Find out what they're doing, find out what they're prepared to do, because just because as a registrar you want to send out something doesn't mean that everyone around you is going to be able to accept it. And vice versa, as an admissions office, just because you're prepared to bring something in doesn't mean the folks around you are prepared to send it. So have those conversations. Years ago, wasn't that many years ago, I worked at USC prior to my current role, and we decided we were going to start sending out PDF transcripts with very little fanfare and very little communication. We started sending PDF transcripts, and our very own admissions office wouldn't accept our own PDF transcripts because they weren't prepared for it and didn't have any way of being able to render them. So it's important that you know who around you is going to be able to take what you're sending and who around you is willing to send you what you want. I think it's super important. And from a business continuity standpoint, I think what we want to take a look at is what is this world going to look like when we're back to the new normal after all of this, after COVID has been resolved. I think we're learning a lot from our situations now. We were already sending about almost 70% of our transcripts electronically before we all went home, and now that number, of course, has gone way, way, way up. and what is it going to look like when we're done? What processes are we going to be able to continue that we've made what we thought were temporary accommodations for during this period? What are we going to be able to do permanently moving forward that are actually best practices that are going to want to maintain? I think we're going to see a lot more endeavors towards electronic anything, fill in the blank, whether it's transcripts, whether it's diplomas, whether it's enrollment verifications, degree verifications, anything that you don't need an actual physical paper or a physical in-person transaction to deliver and or receive. I think we're going to see continue. And how best on your campuses to champion that, whether it's partnering with a vendor, whether it's partnering with your IT department and figuring out what the best way to do that, whether it's EDI, whether it's XML, whether it's PDF, whether it's MOUs with other local agencies, whether it's vendoring it out. Figure that out and have those conversations now. I know that we're all still sort of in a catch-up mode right now. How can we get through the immediate? But this is going to be a conversation for long-term. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. So I stress that communication among your major partners the best that you can. Keep the big picture in mind. What we're learning from what's going on now is super important, and what it's going to look like when we come out the other end of this, going back to the way things were. That's, I don't think, necessarily what we're going to want to be considering. So that's what I had, and I will bring it back to Matt Bemis to sort of wrap this up and take us into the question section.
Thanks, Jim. Can everybody hear me, Michael?
Yep.
Cool. So just to restate, what we've all said here is that we are very interested, the Speedy Committee in particular is very interested in helping you with any of your electronic data exchange pinch points. And particularly getting off the blocks. It's not just EDI, it's XML, it's PDF. There's a best practices for PDF that was put together by the Speedy Committee and published a few years ago. That's available on the Speedy website as well. I think Mike's going to share the Speedy listserv email address. So we're there. We're a very active work group. We meet weekly. We attend national and regional conferences. You'll see our presentations about, and one of the things we also do is we get down to the vagaries of electronic data exchange. There's a lot of nuances that go on with this, and so reaching out to one of our committee members who has implemented in whatever flavor you're going to do will save you a lot of time. And this isn't just pointing you in the right direction. We'll help you build files. We'll help you build EDI files that conform to the standard, or XML files. We'll help you figure out how to get PDF transcripts published within a week using the vendor with asking the right questions. So this is very much a resource that ACRO put out. I think in the early 90s, the Speedy Committee was formed, and its longevity has served as a need to make sure we all understand the value of exchanging electronic data, the removal of fraud, and all the things that go along with the efficiencies of that. So again, you'll have the information to contact Speedy, and we're there for the community. This is what we do, and we're a group of 12 do-gooders looking to do good. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Matt. We are going to move into the Q&A section. But before we do, I have one or two points that I would like to just reiterate. I think that one of the things that's really important as you try to move towards sending and or receiving electronic transcripts on your campus is a point that James made, and that is that partnership between the registrar's office and the admission office. I'm not sure who's on the call in terms of how many are from the registrar side and how many are on the admissions side. But if you can tighten the partnership there and build that pathway and do that work together, I think you're going to have a little bit more campus clout, because these are the two offices that are receiving and sending and serve the students in that way. And so I think that's a really powerful combination, and I hope that you'll work with your campus partners. So questions, I think these are a couple of relatively easy ones. The first is, Is Speedy only available for US-based institution?
Melanie, this is Matt. One of our Speedy members, Doug Holmes, is from the Ontario Processing Center. The Canadian presence has had a strong presence within the Speedy group for a number of years, as far back as I can remember. So while there are some complications of trading on the Speedy server due to the Patriot Act, we've had a regular presence in North America. We have not had an international presence to date. I think that part of that is the complexity of exchanging data over the Speedy server. And that has widened a bit with the Groningen Declaration. But right now, all of North America is represented in that committee.
Thanks, Matt. Another question is, do students request transcripts directly through Speedy?
No, they don't. A student would have to have a registrant ID to actually request a transcript. What most schools do, such as CCC Trans and California Consortium, or other activities, what they do is they negotiate the transaction. They may even package or bundle up the EDI or XML, but they are registrants. The vendor themselves are registrants with the Speedy server, and they deliver to other registrants on the Speedy server.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Matt. There was a question. I answered it in the Q&A in print, but there was a question about the website for the Speedy Resources. And so it is available both in chat and in the Q&A. And that website, if you don't copy and paste directly from there, if you go to acro.org, under Resources, Electronic Records and Data Exchange, and you can find all of the Speedy resources on that part of the website. I have another question. We have trouble finding a way to share transcripts internationally. NSC and Parchment are not an option either. Does anyone have thoughts that they'd like to share about options for sharing internationally, or perhaps talk about some of the work that's being done through GDN?
So please, other Speedy committee members, interrupt me. But we do have quite a few international study abroad programs. And over the years, we have relaxed our standards in getting PDF transcripts from some of those schools, largely because of the time involved. That is a very time-sensitive process to articulate and transcribe those courses, particularly because we treat them as USC courses. They're listed on the USC transcript. So we have been in the practice of accepting PDF transcripts, not digitally signed, from a number of schools if they're coming from a dedicated account. And we do follow up and match those to the official documents later in time. But we found that is not just a convenience, but this is a necessary evil of sorts in order to get our students through to know what is a final requirement or final requirements based on what they've done, what they've taken abroad.
Yeah, and if I can add, I think alternatively, if you take a look, particularly with PDF transcripts, if you take a look at what security measures you're putting in on those documents, that helps a lot. A lot of things are firewall prohibitive, and if you put the right types of security on your document, those can be overcome. Those hurdles can be overcome. We used to see that at my previous institution, where we would be trying to send PDFs to places like China or Saudi Arabia, and we had too many security bells and whistles put on the document that it wouldn't enable them to actually download them and view them. And sometimes even just domestically to military institutions, if you put too much security on a PDF document, they become difficult to download and view. The technology with the vendors now is such that if you take off a lot of the security pieces, the digital rights management and those things, they'll be able to get through those firewalls. They'll still be secure. They'll still be unalterable, and they'll be able to be sent to places that have that security. China, Saudi Arabia, military institutions, those types of things, and that's particularly important.
Thanks so much, James. There are a number of questions around security, email, and PDFs. So I'm wondering if Matt, you can talk, or one of you can talk a little bit about best practices around PDFs.
Well, and I may have opened a can of worms here in that we do accept PDFs that are not digitally signed from known accounts for institutions where students study abroad for necessary reasons. And again, largely those are from a timing purpose, but these are also resources that are highly trusted. So we know the person sending it, we know the account, and we have a relationship. So that is one of the methods of exchanging data with a known person or quantity, that you've established a level of trust, and trust allows you to do that without blue ribboning or other security features. That's certainly not ideal if you're just an inbox collecting PDFs from the public. That's certainly not a recommended practice, and that's why we have digital signatures and security features with PDFs. But there are reasons to do that at times, though.
I can talk a little bit about security in PDFs. When you're using a vendor network, especially on the receiving side, you have a secure transmission, you have two known endpoints, and they can take some of those security measures off of the transcript, the PDF itself, as opposed to, like you can only view it so many times, or it expires after 30 days, or you need a password. All of those types of security, while good if those PDFs are being emailed over, when you're trying to load those to an imaging system or a workflow system, and it has to go through your processing, typically those types of security on a PDF will stop the processing dead in its tracks at some point. So if you work through a vendor and you have vendor connected networks, then you can get rid of those internal PDF security because you use the network and the security around the transmission as the security, which is very, very helpful on the receiving side. I know with COVID-19 in our freshman transcripts, we've had a lot of students email the transcripts and they're secured. So after the second or third person looks at them, suddenly the next person says, it won't open, I can't see anything. And when you go look at the PDF that's been uploaded to our imaging system, it's because it had a total of 3 times it could be opened, or 30 days that it could be viewed, or it's requesting a password that no one but the first person who loaded it knows. So those are things that you definitely have to work around when you're then trying to take those PDFs and load them into automated workflows.
Also important to remember that, unlike now when all of us are trying to be flexible and accept unofficial documents, which would be PDFs, as Sue stated, emailed directly from the student, that really the only PDFs that would be considered official would be directly from the service provider that's acting on behalf of the institution, or directly from the institution themselves. And those are really the ones where the security can be relaxed because there's a trusted, secure network and relationship. So those ones coming from students most likely have security and probably should have security, but regardless, they are not official documents if they're coming directly from the student. They may be appropriate to use right now during the COVID-19 exception processing, but I would still track those as unofficials.
Excellent, thank you so much. A couple of other questions. We have a question specifically, are there any Speedy Committee members who are using Banner?
I am not. I'm not aware of that.
I know there are past Speedy there are ex officio Speedy committee members who are very familiar with Banner and could be used as a resource.
So I would suggest perhaps for that particular question, if you would be willing to email speedy@acro.org, I think that the Speedy Committee could probably help you connect to a resource that could support your banner questions. That
Yep.
an accurate statement?
Yes.
Exactly.
Excellent. Thank you. And then there's a clarifying point. And so I'm not sure, but there's a clarifying point around unofficial transcripts. So the question is, unofficial transcripts were mentioned. Does that include student self-reported data? I'm not.
Melanie, can I start with that answer?
Yes, please.
So to be fair, USC sent out an invitation to its 8,200 prospective transfers this past April, the ability to self-report their transfer data. And a third of the students took advantage of that. And those third actually went to a brand new service that we stood up with a national vendor to self-report the data, package it up in EDI in a format that is consistent with the prefix and suffix listed on transcripts, and deliver that over the Speedy server and load it into our student information system. And that was a brand new venture with College Source. And in that regard, we have the third of the applicants have loaded basically virtually loaded their own coursework. And so those who are admitted, when we get official documents, we're going to override the reporting grade. That's what controls it as self-reported. And it allows us to process transfer at scale. And so it's a pilot project. We reached out because we had this need with our tight turnaround time and transfer. And so we were very surprised with the results and the participation. And so I do know the person asking that question is with that vendor. So that's not coincidental. So, but it has been something that we're seeing what the value is to the community. And for USC, we're able to advise our students showing up orientation based on validated transfer work, knowing what coursework they've completed if they got it right. And by the way, early results are the majority of students accurately reported the work they've taken based on official documents we have.
At our institution at University of Phoenix, we don't have the self-reported data yet from the students, but we are, as part of the unofficial transcript acceptance process, we are accepting things that are not necessarily a transcript, but that the student could print out of the institution's portal, their student portal, that would show their credits and grades. So it would be the same data that you would receive on a transcript, but perhaps in a slightly different format, like a progress summary report or something. So we are trying to be flexible in that nature. There has to be enough information on there for us to identify the institution that the student is sending it for, which can be a challenge at times. And so we are making phone calls and doing things of that sort to verify that what we're looking at is the information that would be on a transcript. But the stuff that Matt's doing is exciting and new and interesting. And we just haven't started down that path.
Yeah, San Diego State also is doing student reported data. We have our own, we call it a supplemental application, where the student fills out the self-reported courses and grades. And of course, it all has to be verified by transcript later on, but we do our first pass with student reported data.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All of those projects sound really exciting. It looks like one last question, and that is the required format of the transcript also available on the Speedy server at speedyserver.org?
That information is available on the PESC, the Post-Secondary Electronic Standards Council site. It's www.pesc.org. All of those transcript schemas, as well as the implementation guides and the quick start guides, are available for free on that website.
Thank you for that. I have put the pesc.org website in the Q&A as an answer as well. I hope that you will all visit PESC. PESC is a long time partner with ACRO. And I have one more. It looks like there are no more questions. I have one more comment I would like to make, and that is just a slight plug for the Groningen Declaration Network. I know that that has been nodded to a bit in some of our panelist comments. And for those of you who are unaware of the work of that network is working to ensure that digital data transfer for learners will be able to happen worldwide. And so when some of these questions that have arisen around international documents, international transcripts, and exchange of data with international institutions, if you had asked me 10 years ago if I was going to see that happen anytime soon, I would not have responded in the affirmative. I have seen a tremendous amount of work on a global scale and seen quite a lot of successful pilots and projects. And so I firmly believe that we will see digital exchange on a global scale become commonplace sometime during my career. And that's a really exciting move. I hope that if you have questions or are curious, that you will visit groningendeclaration.org for more information on that as well. And Anita has popped that into the chat, so thank you very much. And I think that concludes our webinar. Next slide, our Q&A section. I have a couple more things I want to share. For those of you who have very specific challenges and need some additional support beyond the free support offered by Speedy, Acro Consulting has spun up a new service and is now offering express consulting sessions. These are $9.95, and they're designed to give you seasoned expertise and actionable results in a very targeted way. If you have questions, contact consulting@acro.org for more information. Next slide. I wanted to share with you also, we talked about that this is the third in a 3-part series. And so there are 2 other recordings in the archive. One is transcript processing made simple during COVID-19 with Parchment. And the second is solving your transcript and other documentation needs during COVID-19 and beyond with the National Student Clearinghouse. Those are the last 2 vendors, third-party vendors in this space. And so we asked them to share their simple solutions with you. And then we also have our Speedy Committee, who does a much more homegrown solution that has been around for more than 30 years. We would like to invite you to additional coffee breaks. This Friday, we'll be talking about athletics eligibility in the time of crisis with the NCAA, NJCAA, and NAIA. For more information and for registration, please visit acro.org/COVID guidance. And we hope that we will see you later in the week. Happy Wednesday, and thank you for joining us.